Right now, you're looking at yourself through someone else's eyes. Maybe it's your mother's disappointed gaze when you didn't live up to her expectations. Maybe it's your father's voice telling you, you're not good enough. Maybe it's that teacher who said you'd never amount to anything. Or that boss who made you feel invisible. But here's what I need you to understand, and this will disturb you. The person you think you are isn't who you really are. It's who you've been told you are. And that false identity is destroying your life one thought at a time. I've spent over 4 decades studying human consciousness, teaching in classrooms, writing books like Your Erroneous Zones and The Power of Intention, working with tens of thousands of people who were trapped in the same prison you might be trapped in right now, the prison of other people's opinions about who you are. And what I've discovered will challenge everything you believe about yourself, as I wrote in Your Erroneous Zones. You are the sum total of your choices. But here's what most people don't realize. If you don't consciously choose how to see yourself, your choices will be made for you by old programming, by fears, by wounds that have nothing to do with who you really are. You are not your history. You are not your mistakes. You are not your limitations. You are not the labels that have been placed on you. You are an infinite being having a temporary human experience. But you can't access that infinite potential until you change the way you see yourself. Let me prove this to you right now. Think about the voice in your head when you look in the mirror. Is it kind? Is it loving? Is it encouraging? Or does it immediately start cataloging everything that's wrong with you? That voice isn't yours. It's the voice of everyone who ever made you feel small. And you've been carrying it around like it's the truth. The way you see yourself is the invisible force that shapes everything in your life. It's not just how you think about yourself. It's the thermostat that regulates your level of success, happiness, and fulfillment. If you see yourself as someone who doesn't deserve good things, you'll unconsciously sabotage any good things that come your way. As I've always taught, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But first, you must change the way you look at yourself. This is perhaps the most profound application of this principle, because your self-endurance is the lens through which you view everything else in your life. I worked with a woman named Maria, who introduced herself by saying, "I'm Maria and I'm a failure." Not, "I've experienced failure." She said, "I am a failure." She had been carrying this identity for 27 years, ever since her high school guidance counselor told her she wasn't college material. One person's opinion, delivered in a 5-minute conversation, had shaped her entire life. During our session, I asked Maria a simple question. Who were you before someone told you that you were a failure? She was quiet for a long time. Then tears started flowing. "I was curious," she whispered. "I loved learning. I wanted to help people." That's when Maria realized she had been living someone else's definition of who she was instead of her own truth. This is what happens when you let others define you. You stop being who you are and start being who they say you are. You stop living your life and start living their opinion of your life. In The Power of Intention, I wrote about how we become disconnected from our source when we allow external definitions to override our internal truth. Right now, I want you to ask yourself, whose voice is in your head when you think about yourself? Is it your voice, or is it the voice of someone who hurt you, disappointed you, or tried to control you? Your self-image determines what you believe you deserve. It determines what risks you're willing to take. It determines what dreams you'll pursue and what opportunities you'll accept. It determines how you show up in relationships, how you perform at work, and how you treat your own body and mind. But here's what most people don't understand. Your self-picture isn't fixed. It's not permanent. It's not who you really are. It's just a collection of thoughts and beliefs that you've accepted as true. And since you created it, you can change it. When you were born, you didn't have a self either. You didn't think you were smart or stupid, attractive or ugly, worthy or unworthy. You were pure potential, pure consciousness, pure being. But then the world started telling you who you were. Some of these labels were positive, some were negative, but all of them were limitations because they reduced your infinite potential to a finite set of characteristics. They turned you from a human being into a human doing, from unlimited possibility into limited identity. I remember working with a man named David who was incredibly talented but couldn't seem to succeed in business. Every venture he started would fail just as it was about to take off. During our conversations, I discovered that David's father had repeatedly told him, "Don't get too big for your britches." David had internalized this message so deeply that he unconsciously destroyed his own success. David wasn't failing because he lacked ability. He was failing because he couldn't see himself as someone who deserved success. His self-construction was set to small and humble, and anything that threatened to make him too big was automatically rejected by his unconscious mind. But here's what I discovered that will shock you. When I asked David to imagine his problems being solved, he felt empty. He felt like he would have nothing to talk about, nothing to think about, no reason for people to pay attention to him. He realized that his problems had become his personality. This is the power of self-knowledge. It's not just how you think about yourself. It's the invisible force that shapes every decision you make, every action you take, and every opportunity you either embrace or reject. In Wishes Fulfilled, I wrote about the importance of assuming the feeling of your wish being fulfilled. But you can't assume the feeling of success, love, or happiness if your self-picture won't allow it. You can't manifest a life that's bigger than your self-concept. Let me share with you the most common ways people trap themselves in limited self-examination. And I want you to be brutally honest with yourself as I describe these patterns. First, there's historical identity. You define yourself based on what you've done in the past rather than what you're capable of in the present. You say, "I'm not good at math," based on a struggle you had in 3rd grade. You say, "I'm not creative," based on a teacher's comment from decades ago. But here's the truth. You are not your past. Every cell in your body has been replaced multiple times since whatever experience you're using to define yourself. You are literally not the same person who had those experiences. As I often remind people, you are not what you've done, you are what you do. Then there's comparative identity. You define yourself in relation to others rather than in relation to your own potential. You're the smart one or the dumb one, the successful one or the failure. But these comparisons are meaningless because they're based on limited perspectives and temporary circumstances. When you compare yourself to others, you're comparing your inside to their outside. You're comparing your private struggles to their public successes. You're comparing your reality to their highlight reel. There's also conditional identity. You believe you're only worthy of love, success, or happiness if you meet certain conditions. You think you're only valuable if you're perfect, only lovable if you're pleasing others. But this creates a prison of constant striving and never-ending anxiety. In Real Magic, I explored how we create our own reality through our beliefs and perceptions. But when your self-worth depends on external conditions, you're giving away your power to create that reality. You're making your happiness dependent on things outside your control. The most dangerous form is victim identity. You define yourself by what has been done to you, rather than by what you can do. You become the person who was abused, the person who was abandoned, the person who was betrayed. I'm not minimizing the reality of trauma, but I am saying that you have a choice about whether these experiences become your identity or become part of your story of transformation. As I wrote in Excuses Begun, the only limits you have are the limits you believe. Your past can be your prison or your teacher. Your wounds can be your weakness or your wisdom. Your struggles can be your limitation or your strength. The choice is always yours. But making this choice requires you to take radical responsibility for your life. It requires you to stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the creator of your experience. Many people resist this responsibility because it's easier to blame others for their limitations than to accept their power to transcend them. But here's what I've learned. The moment you accept responsibility for your life is the moment you reclaim your power to change it. The psychological dangers of living with a distorted self-image are profound and far-reaching. When you see yourself through the lens of limitation, you create what I call erroneous zones in your thinking. These are areas where you automatically assume you can't succeed, can't be loved, can't be happy. These erroneous zones manifest in your relationships as patterns of self-sabotage. You might push away people who treat you well because their kindness doesn't match your internal belief about what you deserve. You might stay in toxic relationships because they confirm your negative self-image. In your career, a limited self, meaning a self which is chronic underachievement. You might avoid promotions, turn down opportunities, or sabotage your own success because deep down, you don't believe you're worthy of more. The long-term emotional cost is devastating. You live in a constant state of anxiety, always worried that people will discover you're not as good as they think you are. You experience depression because you're not living authentically. You feel resentful because you're not pursuing your dreams. Here are the warning signs that your self-worth is running your life. You dismiss compliments. You downplay your successes. You avoid risks, even when they're safe. You stay in relationships or jobs that don't honor your worth. You talk to yourself in ways you'd never talk to someone you love. I worked with a woman named Jennifer who had an internal voice that was constantly berating her. "You're so stupid," it would say. "You're so ugly. You're so worthless." When I asked Jennifer if she would ever speak to her daughter that way, she was horrified. "Never," she said. That's when Jennifer realized she was being more cruel to herself than she would be to her worst enemy. The relationship you have with yourself is the most important relationship you'll ever have. It's the foundation for every other relationship in your life. So how do you begin to change the way you see yourself? It starts with awareness. You have to become conscious of the story you're telling yourself about who you are. You have to recognize the voices in your head that aren't your own. Start by asking yourself, what do I believe about myself that might not be true? Whose voice do I hear when I think about my limitations? What labels have I accepted that might be keeping me small? Then begin to question these beliefs. Where did they come from? Are they based on current reality or past experiences? Are they based on facts or opinions? Are they based on your truth or someone else's judgment. As I wrote in Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, you are not your thoughts, you are the thinker of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts about yourself. You are the one who can observe your thoughts about yourself. This means you have the power to change them. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough," you can step back and ask, who is thinking this thought? And is this thought true? This process of questioning your self-limiting beliefs is what I call becoming the observer of your own mind. But changing yourself isn't just about changing your thoughts. It's about changing your entire relationship with yourself. It's about treating yourself with the same compassion you would show a good friend. Most people are incredibly cruel to themselves. They say things to themselves that they would never say to another person. They judge themselves more harshly than they judge others. They hold themselves to impossible standards while making excuses for everyone else. If you can heal your relationship with yourself, if you can learn to see yourself with love and compassion, if you can treat yourself as the magnificent being you truly are, then everything else in your life will begin to transform. This process requires what I call the practice of self-acceptance. Not self-improvement, not self-criticism. Self-acceptance. Accepting yourself exactly as you are, while simultaneously holding the vision of who you're becoming. As you begin this process, you'll notice something remarkable happening. The way others treat you will begin to change. The opportunities that come your way will begin to improve. The quality of your relationships will begin to deepen. This isn't magic. This is the natural result of changing your self-picture. When you see yourself differently, you carry yourself differently. When you carry yourself differently, others respond to you differently. But here's what might surprise you. The people closest to you might resist your transformation. They've become comfortable with the old version of you. They've learned to relate to you based on your limitations, not your potential. Some people in your life are invested in keeping you small because your growth threatens their comfort zone. They might try to remind you of your past failures. They might question your new beliefs about yourself. They might even sabotage your efforts to change. This is why I often say that you have to be willing to disappoint people in order to live an authentic life. You have to be willing to outgrow relationships that are based on your limitations rather than your potential. Maria, the woman who thought she was a failure, eventually went back to school and became a successful therapist. But the external change wasn't the real transformation. The real transformation was internal. She stopped seeing herself as someone who couldn't succeed and started seeing herself as someone who was learning and growing. David stopped sabotaging his own success and eventually built a thriving business. The real change was that he stopped seeing himself as someone who had to stay small and started seeing himself as someone who could contribute value to the world. These transformations were possible because these individuals changed the way they saw themselves. They stopped accepting other people's definitions of who they were and started creating their own definitions based on their highest potential. You have this same power. You have the ability to redefine yourself at any moment. You have the capacity to release old limitations and embrace new possibilities. But this choice requires courage. It requires you to step into the unknown territory of your own potential. It requires you to risk disappointing people who are comfortable with the old version of you And you'll see it when you believe it. I wrote about the importance of believing in your potential before you can see it manifested in your life. You have to see yourself as worthy of success before success will come to you. You have to see yourself as lovable before love will find you. Here are some practical steps you can take to begin changing your self-image. Practice self-kindness. When you catch yourself in self-criticism, pause and say, "That's not the truth of who I am." Replace it with a gentle, supportive thought. Visualize your highest self. Spend a few minutes each day imagining yourself as the person you want to become. See yourself acting with confidence, kindness, and courage. Surround yourself with reminders. Put affirmations where you'll see them. Simple phrases like, "I am enough," or "I am worthy of love," can interrupt old patterns. Celebrate small wins. Every time you act in alignment with your new self-person, acknowledge it. These small wins build a new foundation. Seek out new experiences. Try something you've never done before. Each new experience expands your sense of who you are. As I wrote in 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, you cannot be lonely if you like the person you're alone with. Learn to like yourself. Learn to see yourself with eyes of love, not judgment. The world will mirror back to you whatever you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as capable, you will find opportunities. If you see yourself as lovable, you'll find love. If you see yourself as worthy, you'll find doors opening where before there were only walls. And there's a spiritual solution to every problem. I wrote, "When you trust in yourself, you are trusting in the wisdom that created you. That wisdom knows your worth, even when you forget. That wisdom is always waiting for you to remember who you are." The truth is, you are not who you think you are. You are not your history, your mistakes, your limitations, or your circumstances. You are not the labels that have been placed on you by others or by yourself. You are an infinite being with unlimited potential. You are consciousness itself, temporarily expressing itself through a human experience. You are love, wisdom, creativity, and joy in human form. The person you've been is not who you are. It's who you thought you were based on limited information and false beliefs. But now you have new information. Now you understand that you have the power to choose who you are. This moment, right now, is your opportunity to begin that transformation. This moment is your chance to release the old story and start writing a new one. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you will choose to change. The question isn't whether you have the potential. The question is whether you'll access that potential. Change the way you see yourself, and you change your life. Change your relationship with yourself, and you change your relationship with the world. Change your internal dialogue, and you change your external experience. You are not your past, you are your potential. You are not your limitations, you are your possibilities. You are not who you've been, you are who you're becoming. The moment you truly see yourself as the magnificent being you are is the moment your life begins to reflect that magnificence. And that moment can be right now, if you choose it to be. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is your one chance to express your unique gifts, to follow your authentic path, to become the person you were born to be. Don't let a false, limiting self-perception rob you of this opportunity. Don't let the echoes of past labels keep you small. Don't let the comfort of the familiar prevent you from experiencing the extraordinary. The time for change is now. The person to make it happen is you. And the first step begins with the courage to see yourself as you truly are, magnificent, worthy, and infinitely capable of creating the life you've always dreamed of living. Remember, as I've said throughout my work, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. This is especially true when it comes to how you look at yourself. Change that view, and you change everything. The choice is yours. The moment is now, and the person you're becoming is waiting for you to finally see them in the mirror.